120 seconds. 110 seconds. 100 seconds. 90 seconds. 80 seconds. 70 seconds. 60 seconds. 50 seconds. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
'My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
My friends, once again, it is indeed time to get our talk on. This morning, talk with me, your host, J.C. McCauley, along with the champions of talk. This morning, talk champion in the house, none other than the one and only Jonathan Small. Morning, Jonathan. How you doing?
Doing fine, and you, Stan?
I'm doing very, very well. How was your weekend?
Weekend was nice. I mean, it could have been a little bit more warmer, but it was nice overall. You know, trying to enjoy the day off yesterday, but just wasn't feeling as warm as I was hoping it would be. And pretty much still enjoyed the day overall, and then just trying to lay back, get a little adjusted to the time change. You know, 1 hour ahead. It's not a big deal, but you know.
Yeah, you lose a whole hour of sleep.
Well, they recommend go to bed.
Well, I don't think that's true, because you could always sleep. It's not like you really lose an hour of sleep.
I think it's an adjustment if you are getting up the next morning and you just are prepared to get up at a certain time, and then all of a sudden that 1 hour comes by a little bit quicker. But you know, I kind of go by the clock though. As long as the clock changes, I keep an eye on the clock.
Yeah.
You know, one clock in the house, the kitchen stove hasn't been set. So, but you know, your cell phone, your television, it gives you the accurate time. So every now and then you might. I haven't changed the time in my SUV neither. I don't even know how to do that part. So I'm gonna take that.
You just factor in the change. All right. Yeah, I live by the clock.
clock is very
Yeah,
important.
the clock is very important. If I'm in this office, I watch the clock. I should get you a clock.
What type of clock? You mean just a regular clock?
Yeah, no, a clock in here. I should put the clock over there so you could see the clock too.
Yeah, because the old setup used to have the clock. Remember the time used to go down?
Oh yeah, on the teleprompter.
But you just mean like a regular clock.
Well, a clock
Yeah.
so that you could see what time it is relative for the show, for the count.
Yeah.
The show count. Because I can see the clock. I'm always watching the clock. In fact, if the clock is slow, I'm jacked up big time. When that battery runs low, and I think it's like an accurate time, bad news.
Well, isn't that clock a little bit fast?
It is fast.
It is fast.
It's exactly 5 minutes fast.
On purpose?
On purpose.
Oh, okay.
On purpose. It's fast on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a perfectionist. I like everything to be set at the right time.
Exactly the right time.
I don't like fast. When the clock is a little too fast or a little too slow, I don't really care for that, to be honest. I like to get it set at the right time. Even 2 minutes can bother me a little bit every now and then.
Okay. Well, 5 minutes fast. I give you a little secret. That when I have clients, they watch the clock too, because they want to see how much time they have left.
Yeah.
So this way, when it gets down to the end, I say, "Don't worry, we have a few minutes."
Good strategy.
Yeah, that way they relax. It always gives you the appearance that you're taking extra time.
Yeah. Well, for that reason, I don't mind the clock being a little fast. You have that little extra cushion in between and everything. So,
but time is the currency you can't get back. Once it's gone forever. You can rob the bank, but you can't rob the bank of time.
yeah, and time doesn't stop neither.
No.
It's constantly moving.
It's always moving. Right.
Although sometimes when you're doing something you don't enjoy doing, it's like the time is going by forever. And then when you enjoy what you're doing, the time is going by fast. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just psychologically or just whatever the case may be.
I don't know. They say that when you're doing something you don't like, you're always looking at the time. So it just kind of goes on. It just drags and drags and drags. But when you're doing something that you enjoy,
Right.
you get so caught up in it, next thing you know, it's over. But time moves at the same speed always.
Always, yeah. It just feels like it's probably going
Yeah.
by slower or longer or faster in some circumstances and everything.
Yeah, everybody gets a certain amount of sand in their hourglass, and it's just pouring out. So I always tell people, be careful how you spend your time and mine.
Right. Time is precious.
Time is precious. Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of precious and time, it is Monday. That means, of course, that we have an expert joining us via Zoom, the new way you travel and do everything. And every Monday, we have an expert joining us from somewhere around the country or around the world. Every once in a while, right here from home. But they're always experts in the subject matter. I always encourage you all to take notes. You can learn something. And Jonathan finds guests like no one else. So, Mr. Jonathan Small, you have the floor, my friend.
Well, this morning on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show, we have an internationally, nationally known drug expert. He has played a role in many different areas of drug law enforcement throughout the world and throughout the country as well. He has a good insight. He's connected with major international, national policy makers. So the guest this morning on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show is a non-resident fellow in drug policies and Mexico studies at the James Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University in Houston, Texas, no other than Gary J. Hale. Good morning, Gary. How are you doing?
Morning. I'm doing great. Good to be here this morning.
It's our pleasure to have you here, Gary. Could you kind of let people know a little bit about yourself and background before we get into our topics of discussion?
Sure. So I'm retired from DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. I had a 31-year career with them and a total of 37 years with the federal government. I also did 6 years in the Army intelligence, specifically at the tail end of Vietnam. So during my, after the military, I became a police officer in my hometown, which is Laredo, Texas. Laredo is on the border with Mexico. On the Mexican side, you've got Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, Mexico, and on the U.S. side, Laredo, Texas. So I was a police officer there between the military and DEA. I got recruited by DEA in 1979 and did a 31-year career during which I had 10 different assignments. I worked in overseas assignments, big cities, small cities, intelligence centers, joint duty, which means we get assigned to other agencies. And I'll just name them up real quick. It was New Orleans, El Paso, Boston, Bolivia in South America, DC, Colombia in South America, back to DC, Mexico City in Mexico, then back to DC, and then in Houston. And in Houston, I retired as the regional chief of intelligence. So during that career, during those years and all those assignments, I worked in a number of different positions. I worked tactical operations, which are kicking doors down kind of stuff, law enforcement tactical operations, operational, which are the long-term investigations, strategic, which looks at regional issues, and then policy, which works with Congress and other entities at the highest levels of government to determine which direction we're going as a government with regards to drug law enforcement. So I had a very rich career. I really, truly enjoyed it. My specialty in DEA, you've got 3 specialties. You've got the law enforcement agent, which is the special agent. You have the diversion investigator, which are the people that investigate doctors, hospitals, pharmacies, and chemical manufacturers. And then you've got the intelligence division, and that's where I work. And the intelligence division provides direction, guidance to both the operations division and the diversion division. So it's a robust organization. DEA is kind of like the Marine Corps of the military. We're small compared to other law enforcement agencies, federal law enforcement agencies, but very agile and very innovative as an organization. So I truly enjoyed my career. My overseas assignments, like I said, were in Bolivia, Colombia, and Mexico City. So those were some of the hotspots that remain as hotspots today. So I enjoyed living in those places and working in those places, and have really nothing but good things to say about DEA and the folks that continue to work to try to provide some type of public safety to our nation.
Well, Gary, one of the main problems of drugs is the fact that it is grown and it is processed and it is distributed and marketed. And the largest U.S. consumer market clearly is the United States. But when you have, let's say, cocaine, which Colombia, I believe Peru, Bolivia are your 3 major countries that basically grow cocaine. And then somehow it has to get channeled through, I believe, Mexico, if I'm correct or not. But Mexico definitely plays a tremendous role in the strategy of getting drugs into the United States. Is it as simple as just to arrest your way out of this problem towards trying to win the war on drugs, or what is some of the other strategies that needs to be looked into beyond just making arrests towards the drug problem?
It's a complicated issue. You've got two sides of that coin. It's called the supply and demand. Supply are the countries and operators in those countries that either cultivate and produce the drug, and then the demand side is on the user side. So we, as a government in the United States, have depending on your political views, we've flip-flopped between putting emphasis on the supply side of the equation or emphasis on the demand side of the equation. Generally speaking, the Republicans, which are more conservative in their viewpoints, are more supply side people, and the Democrats, which are more liberal in their thinking, generally speaking, are more demand side focused. So anytime that we have a change of government at the White House and you bring in opposing or different views from your predecessor, then those policies change. And we tend to flip-flop in those policies depending on the political view of the party in office. And that's a big problem that we can talk about a little more as we go along. And that problem is a lack of continuity of operations. But to go back to what you were saying about cocaine, yes, cocaine is generally cultivated. It's a plant, comes from the coca plant, not to be confused with coca as in terms of chocolate. This is coca cocaine, and it's a leaf. And the reason that you correctly pointed out that it's cultivated in Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia, mostly. There's a little bit in Ecuador, but not hardly at all. And the reason it's cultivated in those countries is because those countries are along the spine of the Andean ridge, and the plant thrives between 6,000 and 10,000 feet. It does very, very well for whatever reason at that altitude. So that's why it is cultivated. It's grown in those regions, and then from there, because the Colombians over the years, Colombian traffickers over the years have perfected the production of actual cocaine crystal, because you have to take the alkaloid, you have to take the active ingredient out of the leaf, and there's 3 steps. It's called paste, and then base. Base is what people commonly know as crack, and then after base, it's hydrochloride. Hydrochloride is the finished powder product. And the Colombians have excelled at that processing methodology. So at this point in the evolution, most of the cocaine, once it's put into base form, then it gets smuggled, flown, floated, or driven, or whichever way, but mostly flown. It's called the air bridge, where small single engine aviation aircraft fly the cocaine base into Colombia, into large laboratories, and then it's converted to hydrochloride. So that's just making it. From there, it has to go to market. You also correctly pointed out that most of the market worldwide is in the United States. Some of it goes to Asia and some of it goes to Europe, but comparatively speaking, smaller amount than what comes to the United States. So how does it get to the United States? You have the transit zone. And the transit zone is anywhere from Colombia all the way to the U.S.-Mexico border. Central America plays a big part. Mexico plays a huge part. And eventually the drug gets smuggled across the U.S.-Mexico border into the United States market. And then it's sold or distributed on the streets. And that's where the demand side of the equation then comes into play, because you've got a huge consumer population throughout the country that keeps the product in demand. So that's kind of like a whirlwind tour of the beginning to the end. Mm-hmm. But we'll be happy to zoom in on any of those aspects.
Well, Gary, one thing about drugs, whether it's cocaine, heroin, marijuana, fentanyl, I mean, you can just name your list of different drugs. Some drugs are clearly harder drugs than other drugs. They have a different terminology. They have a different effect factor. There's a different cost product. Some drugs can be sold very cheap. Some drugs like cocaine is usually more expensive. Heroin clearly is a cheaper drug. It has different effects. But is the U.S. particularly so far gone with the demand and the need for drugs that if you stop drugs from ever entering the United States, what type of effect would it have on the human capital side? And also, what type of effect would it have on the economic side? Is the United States and our country so dependent on the illegal drug trade that is part of the U.S. economy?
That's an interesting question with regard to the economy. I would venture to say that the money, and it's probably in the billions, I don't know, I don't have the exact number, the money that is spent on illegal drugs for whatever let's just call it for recreational use because it's not for medical use. So whatever money is spent on illegal recreational use is disposable income. This is money that people are spending, like going out to a bar or going out to a restaurant. Those are not essentials in terms of expenditure. It's disposable income. So would it affect the United States economy if all drugs were to stop coming into the United States? Probably not, because it's disposable income. So that money would then be spent on something else, maybe recreation, maybe music, entertainment, travel. There's a number of things that people spend their disposable income on, and I think it would just, if that were to go away in terms of expenditure, it would be rechanneled into other aspects. And you may see an increase in the tourism industry, an increase in the entertainment industry, an increase in the food and beverage industry in terms of an uptick in spending if drugs were to go away. So I just don't think it would have a negative effect. The disappearance of drugs from our society, illegal drugs, I don't think it would have a negative effect on our economy.
Well, wouldn't that be the starting point of really rebuilding our country, though, if you end the current drug war, if you find a way, and I know different people have different beliefs towards regulating drugs, making it legalized, medicalized, and decriminalized, but let's say, for instance, you was ever to put the drugs, the illegal drugs, under the government control of regulations, like basically alcohol. Some drugs clearly you would have to get medicalized supervision. Yeah. Marijuana can be outright legalized. You have 18 states, I believe, in the United States that has already gone towards legalizing marijuana. Wouldn't that automatically kill the black market side and dry up all of the crimes and violence and social unrest that the drug prohibition laws currently contribute towards?
Well, yes and no, but it's a hard question, and the reason is that one size does not fit all. And cocaine is different from heroin, and heroin is different from marijuana, and marijuana is different from fentanyl in terms of the dangers, and that's why you have the Controlled Substances Act, which is the law that restricts and enforces, restricts the presence, the manufacture, the distribution of illegal drugs is regulated by the Controlled Substances Act, and it's enforced by that act as well. Because some drugs are much more dangerous than others, like fentanyl, they're put on different schedules, and those schedules indicate the relative danger. There's been a lot of debate as to whether marijuana belongs on Schedule 1. Schedule 1 is the most restrictive, where there is no accepted medical use for a particular drug, and that it has dangers to the public and so forth. But those arguments have been chipped away throughout the decades, and yes, marijuana is starting to be accepted more as a soft drug than the hard drug that was originally characterized at. And there is movement in Congress to try to remove it from Schedule 1, to make it more permissive and let people enjoy marijuana if that's what they want to do as a recreational activity. Now, if you move on to heroin and cocaine, that argument kind of withers. It goes away because there are dangers to addiction. There are dangers to life. People, not so much with cocaine, but with heroin, in an overdose. Cocaine, eventually you can overdose and die from it, but not as quickly as you could with heroin or fentanyl. So there are different dangers depending on the different drugs. And that's why they are controlled under the Controlled Substances Act. Now, you start adding confusion to the problem when you take into account all of the different countries that are involved in getting those drugs from their origin to the user market. It's called from the source to the street, or from the farm to the arm. As you're moving those drugs, they're passing, depending on the drug, they're passing through different countries that have different laws, different viewpoints, different social norms, and they may or may not be interested in controlling the drug to the extent that we are. Add to that corruption, where some corrupt officials are happy to look the other way to let the drug go through, and that complicates the matter in terms of having a viable counter-drug law enforcement strategy. So it's a complicated issue. As far as a trend goes, society is becoming more permissive across the board, whether it's gender issues or drug use issues. So as we are evolving through time, people are changing their attitudes, and some of these drugs may eventually be legalized in limited forms, such as marijuana is being now. Marijuana decriminalization is happening across the board. Marijuana use for medicinal purposes is also happening in a lot of locations. And you can see that trend, and it really started in terms of a change in government trend with the Obama administration, where they essentially told their Department of Justice, don't bother, just leave the states alone, and let the states to determine their own end game when it comes to marijuana. So you see a lot of movement. There's several countries, Uruguay and in Colombia and Mexico, that are legalizing a little bit faster in terms of personal use. So you see a big movement across the board. Eventually, there's a number of treaties that are in play where a number of countries have signed on, huge number of countries have signed on in agreement that these drugs are dangerous, that these drugs need to be controlled, that there has to be law enforcement activities to limit the distribution of these drugs and so forth. But all of those treaties will eventually have to be amended and changed as we evolve and become more permissive with drug use of certain kinds of drugs.
Well, Gary, even though you mentioned that it's complicated because all countries throughout the world play a different role towards how they feel towards legalizing drugs and regulating drugs, but wouldn't if the United States be the first country to outright control and regulate all drugs, seeing that it's the largest consumer of drugs, it has a high reputation of setting the bar towards what other countries look at and want to emulate throughout the world? Wouldn't that carry a lot of influence towards other countries that's undecided or against changing the drug policies if the United States was the first country to outright step up and legalize, medicalize, and decriminalize all drugs and put them under the law?
Yes, that's true. A lot of the world looks to the United States for leadership in a lot of areas with regards to either national defense issues or social issues like drug use is. No question that everybody around the world looks to the United States and watches to see what we do, and then either in turn mimic what we do or develop their own policies that are very similar in nature. So no question that we have a very important role as a leader in the world, and we need to be making some very well thought out policies. And this is where where sometimes we don't do a good job because of the flip-flopping that I was telling you about among political parties. So one political party may control or put a lot of effort into the supply side, let's say Republicans, and they could be in office for 8 years, and then comes a Democratic administration, and they put the opposite. They take away the effort on the supply side and put more of an effort on the demand side. Working with drug addicts, working with safe zones for drug use, working with decriminalization, and all of these different things. So you have all these different outlooks in terms of policy, and as we flip-flop back and forth, that degrades our ability to be a leader throughout the world, because people in other nations are looking at us and they're saying, well, you can't even get your act together. How do you expect us to be able to follow when you keep changing the direction that you're going? And that's a lack of continuity of operations, and that's just inherent to our form of government. It's bad. We need to fix that. There needs to, the politicians are always talking about working both sides of the aisle. Well, they need to do a better job with some of these issues, including these social issues of drug use, and agree on one thing, whatever that one thing is. Hey, we're going to do X with regards to marijuana, regardless of the political party, and then have a continuity throughout time, as we were talking about early in the session, talking about time. As we progress through time, we need to have some continuity so that we can develop meaningful policies, laws, and treaties with other nations.
Stan, I kind of want to bring you into this conversation one way or the other. I know how you feel about the fact that people shouldn't be using drugs because they need to be in a clear mind. And that's one reason that I would believe that you feel people shouldn't turn to drugs. But what about the drugs, illegal side of selling drugs? And I'm going to ask Gary this question, but I kind of want to get your opinion first. If people, other than the fact that, let's say, drugs are illegal, what are some of the other reasons why people shouldn't turn to selling drugs, other than the fact that we know it's illegal, but there's a list of other reasons that you believe that people shouldn't ever turn to selling drugs?
Selling drugs?
Yes.
Well, I mean, because it's illegal is a really good place to start. I mean, and it's destructive. Mm-hmm. Drugs addict people. Mm-hmm. So it seems to me to be the height of exploitation. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, this might be overreach, but I think the analogy works. It's just like capturing a group of people and then forcing them into into the sex trade. Mm-hmm. Prostitution. Right. You're exploiting for personal gain. Mm-hmm. The community doesn't benefit from sales of drugs within the community. It deteriorates the community. It causes people to lose focus. They become addicted. They'll do whatever it takes to meet that addiction. So, recreational, as our guest has talked about, if you're spending discretionary income on entertaining yourself, one form of entertainment is just as good as another, as long as it doesn't bring you or the people around you a particular harm. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about drug sales, you're generally talking about illegal drug sales where lots of money are made because people are addicted to something and they'll do whatever they have to get the money in order to meet the need. Mm-hmm. So no, drug sales, I don't see drug sales being beneficial in any way.
And you still don't feel it should be legalized, medicalized, and well, you do believe decriminalized. You said that in the past, that you think some drugs needs to be decriminalized.
I think you probably decriminalize marijuana, but in your comment you said all drugs, all drugs should not be medicalized. Because to me, this is just this is not necessarily the truth or right. This is just Stan. Medicalization of drugs is it's like the opening of the door to legalization. There's a reason and a strategy for medicalizing certain drugs. Mm-hmm. There's a whole industry of drug therapy. It's not like we have to start, medicalizing everything. We have medical We have narcotics and drugs that are used for medicine ad nauseum and very beneficial to human beings as they go in for surgery and treat all kinds of diseases. You know, the medicalization of cocaine, the medicalization of LSD, the medicalization, everything that is being talked about. There's a reason why these things are under controls, as the guest is pointing out, is to limit access to these narcotics that are extremely dangerous for human beings to consume.
Any questions you want to ask, I guess, Gary?
And I'm listening.
Well, that's where the quality control, the danger is in the quality control. We're talking about medicalization of some of these drugs, like taking cocaine or heroin, for example. There's a lot of medical use as for pain management, and that's where we got into the opioid crisis. Pain management gone wild. It went completely out of hand. But there are legitimate uses for some of these drugs, whether they're opiates or stimulants. Cocaine is a stimulant, but there's lidocaine. There's all kinds of derivatives. But the key difference is that these drugs that are used for medical purposes have a very, very strict quality control regimen. That means that when they say they're going to give you 0.05% of cocaine in your lidocaine to numb your gums when you're at the dentist, it's exactly that. Whereas what you get from the streets and jungles of Colombia, you have no idea if it's 95%, 100%, 105%, 65%, and much less when it gets onto the streets of USA, Philadelphia, San Antonio, I don't care where you are. Once the drug traffickers on the street get a hold of the drug and they cut it with different cutting agents, you have no idea, first of all, the purity of the drug anymore, and you have no idea what the adulterant is. The adulterant being the cutting agent. It could be baking powder. It could be rat poison. You just don't. It could be sugar. It could be flour. I mean, it could be anything. And that's where the danger comes in, because now you're adding uncontrolled adulterants to an uncontrolled quality control. Now, has this been perfected to some extent so that death is diminished from illegal drug use? Yes, the Colombians have done a fantastic job with quality control. But flip that over to fentanyl. Fentanyl is produced in Mexico. It's not a drug that is cultivated like cocaine. It's not a plant that's converted, whereas an alkaloid is extracted and then converted into a drug. Fentanyl is manufactured, which means it's a number of chemicals that are combined to make the drug. Unfortunately, and that's happening in Mexico almost primarily, despite the fact that the president of Mexico said a couple of days ago that there was no fentanyl being produced in Mexico. That's an interesting statement by the president of Mexico when his own army has seized tons of fentanyl at different fentanyl laboratories. But as they're making this fentanyl, you don't know. You've got two areas, two places in that supply chain where things can go bad. One is at the manufacturing point, and one is at the distribution point in terms of quality control. So you could make a fentanyl batch, and it could be 150% potent or 95% potent, and then you can send that batch to the United States and get to the streets of wherever, and it's being laced with something else. So by the time somebody consumes it, they could be, taking their final pill forever. They could die from the adulterant, or they could die from the adulterant being something else that's placed on top of the fentanyl, or the actual lack of quality control of that drug. So it's a dangerous situation. You're basically putting a gun to your head and playing Russian roulette every time you take a fentanyl pill, because you don't know if it's going to kill you or not. Those risks have decreased somewhat significantly with marijuana, and less significantly with cocaine, and even more less significant with heroin. So those, and then fentanyl being the worst of the bunch at this point in illegal drug manufacturing. There's always a trend that's being followed by the drug traffickers. They see where the drug use market is going, and they find opportunities, and they adapt to those opportunities to give the consumer market what they want. But the consumer market just needs to be smart. Hey, if you're going to do this, you have to realize that it could be your last pill. So, and that's why, because there is no quality control, or very little quality control, and it generates a tremendous individual danger to your life, if not health.
Mm-hmm. Stan, you going to take a break now? Okay. Well, Gary, I do want to respond back to that, and I do have some questions relative towards what you just stated, but I believe we want to take a quick commercial break. Are you up on the commercial? Okay.
We'll take a break.
Okay.
And we'll be right back. Stick and stay. Don't go anywhere. Very interesting conversation. And I hope you guys are listening, taking notes. Don't go anywhere. Morning Talk. Every bad political decision is made by a politician elected to office. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, just remember this. There are people sitting with politicians in a back room making deals about your future, making policies about your children, making decisions about your neighborhood. To them, you are just a vote. You are not their cause. You are just a vote. Elections have consequences, and if you don't vote, you are actually voting to keep these people in power to work against you. Now more than ever, you need to make your vote count. It's time to clear the air and vote for a mayor that is unbought, unbossed, trusted, and accountable to you, the constituent. My name is J. Stan McCauley, and I am an independent thinker, and I approve this message. I'm asking you for your vote on Tuesday, September the 12th, 2023, in the Democratic Party primary election for mayor of the city of Hartford. For more information, visit McCauleyformayor.com. Have the courage to vote your conscience and vote for the name you trust and know. Vote J. Stan McCauley for mayor.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Okay, my friends, welcome back. It's Morning Talk. Jonathan Small in the house. It's Monday, live.
Okay. Back here with fellow, I guess non-resident fellow in drug policies and Mexico studies for the James Baker Institute for Public Policies, no other than Gary J. Hale. Let's continue back with our conversation. One thing about when you mentioned Mexico and the role that they're playing with the cartels, and you mentioned that they are heavily involved in the drug fentanyl. Also, you left out the part, maybe not intentionally, you left out the fact that China is contributing towards, let's say, the chemicals that is required to make fentanyl, and then it's being processed or produced in Mexico. So I don't believe Mexico is acting alone when you're talking about fentanyl. And then you look at the reasons why it was stated that there is a decrease in revenue towards the fact that marijuana has now become legalized in about 18 states in the United States. So now you're trying to make up for some lost revenue, and clearly fentanyl is a new drug. Another part about when you mentioned the fact that people who are taking these drugs, they don't know exactly what they're taking. Wouldn't, if you have these drugs medicalized under the law differently than having it sold black market, when a person decides to take something, whether it's heroin, marijuana, or even, believe it or not, I hate to say it, fentanyl, but let's just say for the sake they are supervised, you know exactly what's being put into this type of drug, wouldn't that reduce the overall overdose and death rates towards the person, because the fact that you know exactly now, if they're medicalized under a supervision by a doctor, exactly what is in the drugs that you are taking?
Those are good points. I'll start with China. So fentanyl is, or let me put it this way, China is not the only drug that supplies chemicals that eventually make drugs. For example, before fentanyl ever came into the picture, methamphetamine was a big deal. It still is a big deal, but the attention has gotten away from meth and has been refocused over on fentanyl. So how do you make methamphetamine? It used to be manufactured in garages, in motel rooms, in trailer houses, in barns, all over the United States. And how is that happening? Because the active ingredient in methamphetamine is ephedrine. And ephedrine is the same drug and chemical that is in Sudafed, Actifed, all of the antihistamines. So people were going and buying all of the it was not regulated at the time. So people would buy all of the Sudafed and Actifed pills that were in Walmart, let's say, a couple thousand boxes of pills. You crunch them in a blender. You run them through a various chemical process to separate the active ingredient, and you make methamphetamine. So, but you need a lot of chemicals, and you need the raw product, and that the raw product of ephedrine was being bought off the shelves in the United States. DEA passed laws in the late 80s to stop that and to regulate. That's why you have to show ID if you're going to buy any kind of ephedrine product at a pharmacy, so that people can't buy in wholesale quantities off the shelf. So then the entire production of methamphetamine moved over from the United States over to Mexico. The Mexican drug trafficking organization saw an opportunity, and they started making methamphetamine at the wholesale level. But where do you get the quantities of ephedrine to make ton quantities of methamphetamine? Well, guess what? Ephedrine also comes from a plant. It comes from the ephedra plant. It's extracted, the alkaloid is extracted, then it's turned into a powder. That happens primarily in China, India, and to some extent in Germany, but in Germany it's already been converted to ephedrine. So the raw product, the ephedrine that comes from the plant that is being used in Mexico to make ton quantities of methamphetamine is coming from China. And the chemicals, they're called precursor chemicals. If you use a chemical to wash a drug, to clean it and to make it better, like in cocaine, those are called essential chemicals. If you use a chemical that becomes part of the end product, then that's called a precursor chemical. Those precursor chemicals, in the case of methamphetamine and in the case of fentanyl, are coming from China. Unfortunately for us, we don't have a very good relationship with China right now. DEA does have over 85 representation in over 85 countries of the world. We have a representation with China, but the Chinese government just doesn't want to hear it. This is something that they don't care about because it's in the black market. So, and it doesn't account for much in the way of the balance of trade between the United States and China. So, and you know what? It's an American problem from their point of view. So they really don't care. They don't cooperate. China does not cooperate with the United States when it comes to international investigations to try to identify the sources of these drugs, of these chemicals particularly. We had multiple outreach efforts with the Chinese when I was with DEA, and they just, because we would find barrels in Colombia of chemicals, of essential chemicals. We would find barrels of ephedrine in Mexico from China, of precursor chemicals. Just ton quantities of the raw product that is then used to manufacture the end product illegal drug. And the Chinese just wouldn't hear it. They just wouldn't hear it. They just don't want, they don't care. Your problem is not my problem, is their basic attitude with regards to that. Then you move that product in shipload ton quantities into Mexico, and it then converted into the final product. So Mexico has a responsibility, number one, from allowing the illegal importation of these chemicals into Mexico, and two, allowing those chemicals to be converted into a deadly product, and three, then allowing those chemicals to be exported into another country. In some places, that could be an act of war. But in our society, our government looks at it, we kind of, unfortunately, from my point of view anyway, look at drug abuse as a medical problem. Somebody's got an addiction, so therefore they're sick. And if they're sick, then we have to treat it as a sickness. To me, it's a choice. The very first time that you choose to light up, whether it's a cigarette or a joint or pop a pill, you're making that choice. So if that choice turns out to be an addiction, I don't know if that truly converts itself into a disease. Maybe, maybe not. That's up for debate. But now that we're talking about drugs as medicine, I'll address your second point about what if drugs such as fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, and other drugs were chemically regulated so that you would have quality control. Well, you could do that. You could do that theoretically, but why, if that's true, if we were to take that model and say, let's regulate some of these what are called dangerous drugs like heroin and fentanyl, if we were to regulate them to the point where the manufacturers would have very strict production and quality control routines, if that were to be the case, well, why is that? Why is cocaine right now not being allowed into the market? And the reason is, what I believe, is that no matter what you do, no matter what kind of control, what kind of quality control, what kind of sales distribution controls, like at Walmart, making you show your ID if you're going to buy ephedrine, no matter what you do, if somebody wants to abuse it and if somebody wants more and then more and then more, it's like alcohol. When you start drinking alcohol, one drink and you get you get the alcohol effect. But after a while, you're going to need 5 drinks and then 10 drinks because you become accustomed. Your body becomes accustomed to that drug, and you need more of it. So the same thing happens with marijuana, with cocaine, with heroin. We become habituated, physiologically habituated. Our bodies become used to it, and then we just need more of it to maintain the high or the effect that we seek. So even if you did regulate it and to the point where the product had a very strict and a label that said X amount of percentage of active ingredient is in this pill, yeah, you could do that, but the potential for abuse is still there, and that's where the problem comes in.
Well, excuse me, Gary. You know, you're answering the question is excellent, and there's no disagreement with what you just stated. But one part that I believe you left out, why many countries don't want to turn towards regulating and legalizing and medicalizing these type of drugs, is that they are more profitable having these drugs sold on the black market. If you take a drug like fentanyl, particularly, I just heard a report like in Mexico, the average factory worker makes about $23 a day.
Right.
They can make over $100 a day processing and manufacturing fentanyl drugs. And that goes into many other different types of drugs. There's a tremendous amount of money having these drugs being sold like under a black market level, comparable if they are going to be regulated and sold legalized. What would happen to the cartels in Mexico? What type of income would that now say to the Mexican government, who you could say is involved with having these drugs being sold?
Are you suggesting that the governments of these countries are the real suppliers?
They are contributing factors. I would say in Mexico, cops do get paid off. I know that happens here in the United States as well. But I would have to clearly say that if these drugs, well, who's at fault, number one, if the drugs can get into the border? You have the DEA and other homeland security levels. Somehow along the line, if you have these drugs being sold as a black market level, there's a lot of money to buy off people. I mean, they get in through airports, drugs gets into our prison systems. There's so many different ways that drugs gets into places that it's illegal to get into. So somebody got to be turning the other way, allowing it to happen. Yes, I understand you do have drug seizures. You do make arrests. You do confiscate a lot of drugs. But at the same time, as much drugs as you can confiscate and stop and making arrests, there's still a ton of drugs entering the United States through ships, through planes. So somebody has to be getting paid off. Or I mean, to some degree. I'm not saying everybody's getting paid off, but what do you think about that theory, Gary?
Well, it's partially true. It's hard to put your finger on it until you get an informant that says that this particular law enforcement officer is corrupt and letting the drugs through, but it happens. Border Patrol agents, DEA agents, FBI agents, anybody, state police officers. It's a tremendous draw to make easy money by looking the other way or letting a car go through. So insofar as the border, it's mind-boggling because you have about a 2,300 mile long border from California to Texas, bordering Mexico. Yet everything comes through, and you have to also look at it from the historical perspective. Smuggling out of Mexico into the United States has been going on since the days of the Civil War. Mm-hmm. When the North needed cotton for uniform, they would smuggle cotton from Mexico around. They would take it to the Gulf Coast of Texas and then take it around up to New England as contraband around the Confederate States. So and then came alcohol and then came drugs. So smuggling has been a way of life in Mexico for decades, if not centuries, and it has become part of their economy. So it is it is something that is not going to go away because it's part of their social fabric. The society depends somewhat on the money that's made from illegal activities, and at this point, what's going on in Mexico has gone much more beyond just drug trafficking. They have the cartels, so-called cartels in Mexico, which originally started as drug trafficking organizations. Then they're now being labeled as transnational criminal organizations, and I would argue that they should be labeled as armed criminal organizations. But the reason they went from drug trafficking organizations to transnational criminal organizations is because they evolved away from only drug trafficking as a source of income to all illegal criminal activities, just like the traditional organized crime mafia organizations that we know, whether it's trash, whether it's insurance, whether it's extortion, prostitution, gambling, alcohol, you name it. Whatever the illegal activity is going on out there, these cartels in Mexico are now involved. So they evolved away, and drug trafficking is only one of many business lines that they manage. So it's quite a huge enterprise that generates tremendous billions upon billions of dollars of revenue that has woven itself into the fabric of both of our nations, not just Mexico, but in the United States as well.
But isn't the key, again, keeping something drawing billions of dollars of revenue is the fact that it's illegal in black market? Wouldn't, once you make something legalized, wouldn't that kind of shift the revenue and almost dry up the cartels? Or would the cartels still be able to make lucrative money?
Yeah. I'll give you a micro example of what you're talking about, and it's a perfect example, and that's marijuana. You mentioned it a few minutes ago. Most of the marijuana in the 1980s before the 1980s, most of the marijuana coming into the United States was coming from Mexico. And then it started coming in from Mexico and Jamaica. And then in the 1980s, mid 80s and beyond, from Colombia. So you had three sources of marijuana coming into the United States: Mexico, Jamaica, and Colombia. Then, so what happens? As time goes on, Americans started messing with cultivation and the indoor grows and all the super potent marijuana that is now being grown in the U.S. It got so good. And at the same time, you have this liberalization of our laws allowing for medicinal use, decriminalization, and personal use. At the same time that's happening, the quality of the marijuana that's being cultivated has increased such that it is so good that the Mexican, Colombian, and Jamaican marijuana can't compete. They cannot compete against American cultivated marijuana. It's the best in the world. So that has had a tremendous impact on that business line as a moneymaker, particularly in Mexico. And that's why you see a shift into the manufacture of methamphetamine and fentanyl. If one dries up, then in terms of revenue maker, then they move to another. And they have done that very successfully, even when that revenue source dried up in the United States as far as marijuana goes.
Well, I think I asked you this earlier earlier during the show, and it's a hard pill to swallow, but sometimes you have to be realistic, particularly if the U.S. is the largest consumer. And I hate to keep saying the U.S. alone, because I know there's other countries throughout the world that do consume drugs, but certainly not at the level that the United States consumes drugs, the harder drugs in particular. If people are so dependent and so used to having something made available, and the drugs all of a sudden gets dried up, there's no way that you can get heroin, cocaine. Well, marijuana is legalized now, so I don't know if you want to put that drug in the same category. But clearly, if you're talking about cocaine and heroin, you have to replace something. You know, there's some medical evidence, and I know with heroin you have the methadone clinic that you have to weed people off. You just can't stop people cold turkey with that particular drug. Now, I don't know about the other drugs in particular, but the mentality also is people are so ingrained to looking for something to either increase pleasure or just become addicted to something. So
or to get zoned out,
to get zoned out. And, you know, former First Lady Nancy Reagan stated it as simplistically as she can, just say no. But I don't know if that theory can really carry a lot of weight, telling people to just say no to something. I mean, you have to say yes to something too.
Yeah, I think it unfortunately speaks to the deterioration of our society.
Right.
We're letting our society be degraded more and more. The president of Mexico said this a couple of days ago. He was angry because there was a congressman here in Texas that recommended or proposed that military action be taken against the cartels in Mexico, and that's when the president of Mexico made some comments saying, you know, the United States society is deteriorating because of its voracious appetite for drugs. And to some extent, it's true. He's correct. Our society is changing, and it's becoming more liberal. Liberal to the point where everything goes. Liberal to the point where when I was a young man in the 60s, we had the top three winners of anything, whether it was a race or any kind of competition, 1, 2, 3. And that's it. Those are the people who got the medals and the trophies. Now, everybody gets a trophy. You show up, you get a trophy for participating. Well, that diminishes the value of that prize that you work so hard to get. And those kinds of attitudes where we're trying to be all-inclusive, all permissive, and just letting people do what they want. I mean, I'm for freedom. That's one definition of freedom, but you can't have freedom to the point where you allow people to just do what they want with no controls, whether it's driving 90 miles an hour down the road, which has potential for killing people, or popping a pill, which has a potential for killing yourself. So yes, I do believe that it is a degradation of our society that is fueling, to some extent, probably exponentially, fueling additional recreational drug use in the U.S. And that then it becomes a snowball effect because then you need more of it. And if this particular product dries up, then we're looking for something else, and that fuels the emergence of something else. Just like fentanyl came behind methamphetamine, and that was a smart move on the part of the Mexican drug manufacturers.
Well, Gary, this was an excellent presentation on your part, and you are expert, and it clearly came across on this morning's show. And I definitely appreciate you being available. I mean, we're just about out of time for this particular segment, so I'm going to look into most likely a part 2 segment, because I don't think a lot of information and a lot of good facts was clearly presented this morning, but I'm pretty sure there's some other information and there's some other sides that also I would like to address in the very near future.
That'd be great.
So
that'd be great.
I'm definitely looking forward, and I know you're one of the best now by interviewing you. So you have your facts and information in order, and I definitely appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
If there's any last words that you would like to leave the audience before we end this segment, feel free to do so.
No, but I take it you guys are in Hartford, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I did a tour in the Boston office, and all of the New England states were under the Boston division: Connecticut, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts. And I got to travel. I lived up in Nashua, New Hampshire, and then I commuted in on the train from Lowell into Boston. And I got to travel all over New England. Great people, wonderful part of the country. I envy you for living there, and I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you. I'd love to come back anytime. So kudos to you and to your program. Good job of outreach to the public to get some of these unknown facts out into the hearts and minds of our fellow Americans.
Definitely, you're well appreciative, Gary, to have you on this particular morning, and I will definitely look into a part 2 segment and keep you definitely at the top of the list, because you really stood out this morning with your presentation, and I look forward to working with you towards another interview in the very near future as well.
Fantastic. I look forward to it.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Godspeed to you, and continue the good work, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. All right, excellent.
Thank you, Stan. He was an excellent presentation.
Excellent
Excellent presentation. And it seemed like you had agreed with pretty much everything that he was stating. I think y'all had some views.
100%.
You don't think we should ever move into the fact of regulating and legalizing these type of drugs? No.
It's like assisted suicide. I mean, there's some things, clearly, personal choice is always available. But there are some things that the government should not sanction. Because once the government sanctions it, it sends a clear signal to everybody. And you're talking about how the United States sets a model for the world. It says, oh, it's okay. It's not okay. Now, if you choose to do it, there's nothing anyone can really do about that per se. But just to take the limitations off. I use the guardrail. You're driving on a winding mountainside road, and there's guardrails there to kind of help guide you along the way. If you take the guardrails off the road, a whole lot of people are going to get killed. They're going to die.
Right.
So there needs to be limitations for the greater good of the whole. And what you're having now is like super duper minorities, like the 1% setting the rule for the other 99, and it's madness. This is how societies collapse.
But the only thing about it is people will say we're losing the drug war currently the way it exists today. More people are turning to drugs, using drugs.
That's a problem within the United States and within our society. When people turn to these things, there are ways to gain control, but it's going to take some serious intentionality and leadership. And I don't know that we have that at some of the highest levels of policy setting individuals. Like, generally that is left to government. It's not only government, because government is ultimately a reflection of the people. So, all right, well, we'll finish that conversation when we come back.
All
right, stick and stay, don't go anywhere. It's Morning Talk. Little Jay Hogart in the background. We'll be right back.
Is evil the pedophile school administrator or taxation without representation? Is it the gatekeeping community leaders who sell out the very people they were elected to fight for? Or is evil the politician that puts out lies and takes in cash? However you may classify evil, having to choose the lesser of two evils still leaves you with evil. Nowhere does this rule apply more than during an election for mayor. Choosing a candidate who is the lesser of two evils still leaves you with evil. No wonder so many people don't vote. It's time for the constituents to flip the script and vote for a mayor you can trust. My name is Jason McCauley. I am an independent thinker, and I approve this message. I'm asking you for your vote on Tuesday, September the 12th, 2023, in the Democratic Party primary election for mayor for the city of Hartford. I, like you, am an independent thinker. So let's sit down and talk about my path to victory and why my 5-point plan for Hartford will work. Stop listening to the uninformed evil interests that tell you I can't win. For more information, visit McCauleyformayor.com. Have the courage to vote your conscience. Vote for the name you trust and know. Vote McCauley for mayor.
Hi,
My name's Jason McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and
Well,
you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, welcome back. Morning Talk. I'm your host, Jason McCauley. And the champions of talk. Every Monday, Jonathan Small is here. Wednesdays, it's Dr. Maya Bowen and Cacique. And on Fridays, it's Cleo Duke Wright. Then you can catch the repeats on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, Sunday. We have lots of fun doing this. That was great conversation. I thought it was.
Yeah, and I don't think we ever had. I mean, we had some professor in the past talking about the research or talking about the medical issues of drugs, but here's somebody that worked on the law enforcement side. I mean, he had a different component in the area that he worked on. I don't know if he was directly making the arrest, but he definitely had the intelligence side that he had mentioned. So you're getting someone that was part of the Houston DEA, drug enforcement agency, narcotics. He spent time in Mexico. He's traveled to Bolivia, Peru. I mean, it's an international. But before drugs hits the street corners on any urban streets in America, there's a huge process that he had addressed, how it gets, made and now funneled here, and then it gets to the level where people can get it on the street level. Again,
Like anything, like a car or sneakers or your food.
Food, yes, process.
Before it gets on the nice shelf at the Whole Foods or the ShopRite or the C-Town, it's got to go through a whole process. Someone's got to pick it, pack it, ship it, sort it.
Well, I've heard people in the past who used to sell drugs or was thinking about selling drugs. They got to the point that they can't be part of selling poison. I think sometime
That's a good way to be. I like that.
Yeah.
The mind got the little conviction came upon them. Selling poison to make killing someone else so that you could profit.
But the only thing about this whole drug market is it goes from the cartels all the way down to the low-level dealer. So you have the cartels who played a big role on the top, and then you have the suppliers, the middleman, and then you get down to the low-level dealer.
It's like any other business, though, Jonathan. You got the auto cartel. They just don't call it a cartel, or the diamond cartel, and it finally gets down to the low-level dealer on the street that's got a little jewelry store or a car dealership or a corner store a bodega.
Mm.
It's just that they're criminals.
Right.
They're a criminal enterprise.
There's no way of.
They're still business people, but
Yeah.
they're criminals.
Right. And that's why you can never justify what they're doing, because they are criminals.
They're criminals.
Right. So the argument, the fact that I'm just a little guy, why you're bothering me?
Oh, you
but you're
talking
still
about the street
Yeah,
level?
yeah. I mean, why you gonna just arrest me for trying to make a little money, but you're still a criminal? I'm not saying what you just stated.
Well, it doesn't. The drug dealer, the street level drug dealer isn't the only criminal. There's lots of criminals.
Yeah.
The bank robber, the stick-up man,
Mm-hmm.
the mugger, the rapist, I mean, there's all kinds of criminals.
Right.
All kinds of criminals.
But sometimes if you knock one criminal element off, then it could turn into another criminal. And
But
that's,
what do you? Right.
you
Like roaches, you get rid of one and then there's another one.
Mhm.
If you don't get to the source.
Right. Well, I think that's the key, getting to the source, but getting to the fact that, and obviously you can't guarantee that people are going to turn out and be a law-abiding citizen. There's going to always be some factors that's going to contribute to someone turning to crime. But certainly if you have money in something and it appears to be lucrative, if it's not lucrative, it makes it a little bit more of a challenge and difficult to compete. Because I've heard people in the past saying, it's hard for me to compete with the drug market because there's just a lot of money involved in drugs. If there was little money, and now people may say, well, there's really not much money at the low level side, that you could be better off working at McDonald's at some time than being a low level street dealer.
Well, it depends on what people want to do for their money. If you don't want to, I don't know.
Well, I think it's simple. You like the fact that you can buy something and sell it. That's what you like to do. You feel like this is the way you are an entrepreneur. This is your gift. This is what you enjoy doing.
What are you talking about? The drug dealer?
Drug deal. That's basically what it is, a drug transaction. So you find another method that they can turn what they like to do.
I think that's idealistic.
Yeah.
You
don't want
I just
to work.
like buying and selling and retail. The whole retail thing just turns me on. So
Yeah.
I want to stand out in the cold and just sell drugs and get shot at.
It all comes with territory.
Criminals are criminals.
Right. But a lot of people are involved in the illegal drug trade. On
A
all
lot
levels.
of people are involved in all trades.
Right.
All businesses require a lot of hands and a lot of people. That doesn't make it better or worse. Some things are illegal, some things are not.
Well, I would say more people are probably going to prison, getting shot and killed over the illegal drug trade than, let's say, other crimes. I mean, that might be the bigger difference, though. The cartels are killing people in Mexico because of the drug. There might be other crimes that people can get kidnapped and get killed as well. But
So ultimately, what is your point?
well, I
What
said
is your
again, I
point?
said it to the guest Gary J. Hale during the show. If you took these drugs out of the black market, would it reduce the crime problem? That's what Cliff Thornton has always stated with efficacy. That you have to, at least at the very least, will attack the crime.
It'll only reduce the crime to the degree that the criminals decide to get right. Because there's always going to be someone who wants it for cheaper.
Right.
You could get cars everywhere, but there are a lot of people who will go to great lengths to get a car cheaper because it's stolen, repackaged. If folk can find a way to get what they want cheaper, they will. There's black market cigarettes being sold right now.
Yeah.
There's places in Hartford you can go and get you a Lucy, right? You get you a single. You can get anything you want. Cocaine, guns,
Right.
sex.
Yes. It's part of
Whatever you want, you can go out and buy if you have the money.
Right.
So it doesn't get rid of the criminal element, because criminals will always find a way to make money.
Yeah, but maybe you won't be having somebody battling over this turf. I mean, that's how it has been for a long time. Marijuana now, you can purchase marijuana legalized. So I don't have to go to the street level dealer to take a risk anymore to buy marijuana if I choose. So.
They'll cut the price. There's gonna be a base line price for cannabis sold legally, and then the criminal will come in and undercut it.
Mm-hmm.
Where people will go to get it cheaper.
Right. Well, again, I'm not saying I'm in favor of. I am in favor of changing the drug laws, and believe it or not, I got to be perfectly upfront. I don't think it's working. We're arresting a lot of people. We're putting a lot of people in jail. Drug addiction is still a tremendous problem. People are still over. I think fentanyl is the leading cause of death amongst a group of demographics of people in this country. I don't know the age bracket. I think it's the leading.
I'm not familiar with those statistics.
Yeah, well, it's
but
staggering.
It's a sad situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, having stated that, is this just information for people to know, or what are you trying?
Again, it's bringing an expert on, as I like to do, before me and you have this type of conversation, so we have something to have a reference on, not just being you talking about our opinions and our beliefs. We had an expert who worked, and Gary kind of believed the same way that you believe, that they need to stay illegal, the drug. I mean, this is what it really comes down to, Stan, having it legalized or illegalized. We can talk around the issue.
It's not going to be legalized for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's too much money to be made.
Well, I'm glad you just said that, because that's what I had mentioned. It's too much
money.
You know,
there are lobbyists right now 3 blocks from here at the state capitol who are trying to influence outcomes with legislation that's going to be beneficial to the people who are paying them to go up and lobby on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
The cartels have lobbyists too.
Right.
People who are working to make sure that these things stay illegal.
Illegal, right.
And they have lots of money.
Yes.
And they corrupt entire systems. They corrupt governments. They corrupt judges. They corrupt superintendents of schools. They corrupt everybody. Ministers, because of the money. So it's a dual thing. It's greed and the love of money,
right?
And an escape from the pressures of society. The society is breaking down.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Because there are no rules.
Yeah.
Imagine if they took the referees off the football field.
You can do what you want to do.
Just let them play.
Yeah.
You know, why is the referee always getting in the way of the game? Just let them play.
Yeah.
Well, and then they'll turn into what? They would be out there killing each other.
Yeah. You need rules, but you have to still examine the rules and the laws that you have on the book too. You just can't say because you have a law that sometimes the law doesn't need to be changed, because there's certain laws that may not be working as best as it's designed to work. So after a while, you do have to look at the laws. I mean,
laws are only as good as your ability to enforce them.
Mm-hmm.
The laws do not stop people from doing stuff.
Right.
The law does not stop you. The law gives those in authority the tool it needs to hold you accountable and convict you, and therefore sanction you.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a rule. Where there's no rule, where there's no law, there's no violation. You could do whatever you want.
Right.
And you can do whatever you want, and no one can hold you accountable. And when you have a society that is like that, it doesn't take long before it spirals out of control. Everyone does whatever they want. And so the rules limit that. That doesn't mean that people still won't do stuff. But when you send a clear signal, you could do whatever you want.
So we wouldn't be better off having marijuana legalized. And I guess it's still early.
Marijuana is, for the most part, legal.
Yeah. But I'm saying, it's Connecticut now and other states that have legalized marijuana. Are they going to be better off having it legalized than it were when it was illegal? That's the $1 million.
I think at the end of the day, marijuana is not that bad of a substance.
Right. But it's in the same drug family, so that's the thing about.
Well, I don't think smoking cigarettes is good.
No, it's not. The Surgeon General has always
they're
said.
legal.
Right. And it's not a good thing to smoke. So you're right.
Right, but it's legal.
Yeah.
So you should be able to buy cigarettes wherever you want. I mean, marijuana to me is like cigarettes. I'm not a fan of smoking.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two ways about marijuana. Some people will say it's the gateway drug to other drugs, and some people will say it's just a drug that you can use and be in control of, and you never turn to any other harder drugs. So there's always two different theories about marijuana. Some people say it's the gateway. At some point, you're going to want something harder. Some people will say you'll always...
I think people want something harder because that's where they are. Mm-hmm. They want something harder, so they go and get something harder. Right. I don't think that marijuana is necessarily a means by which you will automatically become addicted to heroin.
Right. That's true.
So, I have no real data or history to support anything around this because it's not an area of huge concern to me. Having said that, the argument that marijuana is a gateway drug helps keep it illegal.
Right.
And there are individuals who profit from it being illegal. But now that they've changed their business model, they will now profit from it being legal. Because they will control the market. Squeeze the little guy out.
Yeah.
You won't be able to compete. You can't open up a cigarette company that's going to be competing on any major level. It's like a microbrewery. They're not going to let the microbrewery get to be this huge chain. The competition is always there. Some places will use rules. They'll use the system. They'll use the legal system to regulate you to death with a new law that says that you don't have the right to do this in this particular area or some zoning thing. But, they're not killing folk like the unregulated, drugs on the street. The competition kills you.
Right. And again, I don't have all of the facts and information on the latest 2 homicides in the capital city of Hartford.
Terrible.
But I would say that's a sad cry. The first incident, clearly the person was shot. And it's kind of ironic because I had mentioned to you last week about Baltimore Street, how I didn't think that was, and sometimes you can't even blame the street. It just happened that he was shot initially on Baltimore Street in the broad daylight. And I guess he was trying to drive himself to the hospital, driving down Albany Avenue, and then ends up crashing into other cars at the corner of Albany Avenue and Woodland Street. A young man, his father actually went to school with, a long time ago. But that was a horrific incident. I didn't see it. I mean, I did see the police heading to the scene. But for people to witness something like that in your community, and fortunately he didn't cause no other deaths or injuries, driving. I don't know what rate of speed he was even driving when he crashed into those cars. And then another, just last night or yesterday mornings, some man from Bloomfield ends up shot and killed on Albany Avenue. And it seemed like crime was very low in Hartford for the beginning of the year.
It's only March.
Yeah, but it was only 3 up until that point.
That's
now
one
2
a month.
in 1 week. Yeah, 1 a month.
Right, it's not even got hot yet.
Right. But
you and I have been having this conversation for 20 years, Jonathan.
Yeah, but you're running for mayor again now, so it's going to be part of your agenda to focus on public safety to some degree.
I have a public safety plan, have had a public safety plan. It remains the same. Violence is an outward manifestation of a different problem, and it is a health issue. And so it has to be treated like a health crisis, not a crime crisis. But there's money in fighting crime, much more so than fighting health. And so, police departments are funded by these crime-fighting dollars. It doesn't mean that we don't need the police. We do need the police. The police need to be supported. The police are not the enemy. It's a misguided approach to how you deal with the real problem.
Well, did you look at the segment yesterday that I sent you about real stories with Mayor Luke Bronin talking about some of the legislation laws of having the repeat offenders constantly being released or not there's a problem of many repeat offenders.
That was I didn't watch it, but I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Elliker and some of the other mayors were doing a press conference asking for, I guess, the prosecutors to be tougher because they know that a lot of these crimes are committed by the same people over and over again.
Repeat offenders. So that's a serious problem there. You're trying to run for mayor of a city and you have a lot of repeat offenders constantly not getting sentenced long enough. They're constantly going to continue doing the same type of crimes. I think that would frustrate anybody to know that this person shouldn't even be on the streets.
Well, that is true. Why are they out? Because there are liberal, and I don't mean politically liberal, there are very laxed rules that are applied.
Right.
One can only come away with one thought. There is an intentional desire to have chaos within the society. It benefits someone's agenda.
Yes. Because you can kind of pinpoint this is where the problem is coming from. The repeat offender.
Most crime is done by a small group of people. Everyone's not criminals.
Right.
Being a criminal is a very hard work.
I know you said about a drug dealer is a hard job, so a criminal too.
Any crime. Anytime you're a criminal is that's a hard job, being a criminal, because there are no rules to regulate whatever business you're in, and you could suffer great harm if you get caught.
See, I kind of think it's a hard life. I don't know if there's a difference between a hard job and a hard life. But let's just say for the sake, it is the same thing. Being a criminal, you can kind of set how you want to commit your crime. You can think, I want to crime this way, and when I'm ready to commit the crime, I can know I'm going to do it at my own pace. I'm under a lot of pressure. I'm under a lot of figuring out exactly how to go about committing the crime. But the actual process of a crime, I don't know if it's a hard job to do.
Crime is very difficult. It's
yeah.
difficult. A lot of times crime comes out of desperation. If you have to feed your family and you don't have a job, you're going to eat.
Right.
Just to feed yourself. So what do? You do whatever you have to do. One way to make money is through the illegal sale of narcotics,
right,
or to steal something from somebody. All right,
but it's all a crime.
Yes, it's crime. But if you want to really attack some of these issues, you have to find the root cause of the issue, just like you would a public health crisis. So if you have some sort of manifestation of stuff going on your skin, then you find out what it is that's causing that. Or you find, oh my goodness, it's tooth decay. There's poison in your system that's causing this. So we remove the bad tooth.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? You don't put makeup on.
You get rid of the bad tooth.
You get rid of the bad tooth, or you get rid of whatever it is that's causing the issue. Well, poverty is a huge contributor to the issues that are in urban America and in suburban America. Because where you have all these little crystal meth labs out there, and the double wide and the single wide, those areas are impacted by poverty.
Yeah.
So you could undercut a lot of this by making sure that people that are impacted by poverty have opportunities to be gainfully employed. If they shipped off a lot of the work that people were doing to foreign countries in an effort to get more money, greed, and the regulators relaxed a lot of those rules that prevented these things from happening. And it happens at the detriment of the society. So people are making these decisions that impact everybody. And I guess, we're running out of time.
Yeah.
We have to talk about this some other time because we're running out of time.
Yeah. Well, like I say, hopefully you're putting yourself in the right position, Stan, to be able to do something about things that you see as a problem. And again, I would assume that's why you're looking at running for mayor again for the city of Hartford. So, you're doing a good deed. The fourth time you're going to be running over a 15-year period.
It is the fourth time, unlike other people that didn't win. I continue to try.
Try, yeah.
Right. It's interesting because people make it sound like I'm the only person that lost the election. There's a whole lot of people running, and a whole lot of people didn't win.
But you run the most.
I run the most because I don't get the. I remember the very first time I ran, they said you're not going to win, but that does not matter because the question really is, what will you do after you lose? That was the very first time I ran.
Right.
They said if you keep at it, then everyone will know you're sincere. So I keep at it because the reason for running hasn't changed, and nothing, and the fix hasn't arrived. And in my never to be a humble opinion, the people who are currently running don't have an answer or solution, and I don't think that they would be good at the job.
And you believe and care about Hartford enough to want to run and to try to make a difference.
Yes. Once again, put it all on the line. The first time I did it, I lost my job.
Right. 2000.
With that as the backdrop, I'm willing to lose everything again for Hartford. So.
Well, like I say, put yourself in the position, whatever your campaign strategy is going to be, how you want to go about running your campaign. I mean, that's going to be real important. And at some point, get to the point that you are the Democratic nominee. That's the next step towards September or whenever they have that.
September the 12th.
The 12th. Is it important for you to get the endorsement of Mayor Luke Bronin, or that doesn't matter to you?
It's important to get the endorsement of everybody. I would be stunned, shocked, and awed to get the endorsement of Luke Bronin.
Right.
I don't see that happening by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. Okay.
That is not likely to happen.
Okay.
Right. So I'm not actively seeking the mayor's endorsement. There are a whole lot of other people that are doing that.
Well, again, I mean, he stated yesterday on Real Stories he hasn't officially endorsed any candidate, but I would assume at some point he will endorse.
He may or he may not.
He may not. Okay.
A lot of people stand down.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well, again, I mean, I wish you the best of luck again, but in knowing your campaign strategy and your platform, what are you advocating? I mean, it's still early, so obviously I don't expect you to put everything out.
Everything is out. McCauleyformayor.com.
Okay.
I know exactly what I want to do.
Okay.
I know exactly what my policies are. I know exactly what the plan is because I've been listening to Hartford for the last 35 years. Their needs haven't changed.
Right.
So any candidate that needs to listen to what Hartford has to say hasn't been listening. I've listened.
And then again, you can state why you are the best candidate to become mayor of Hartford, because that's going to be real important to say. What
I
makes
can
you
say that, Jonathan.
Yes.
Yeah.
What makes you the best candidate, and what makes you stand out better than the other candidates? That's important. I mean, obviously your sincerity, your beliefs, what you've done, you have a track record that clearly you can say, this is why I'm the best candidate to become mayor of Hartford. People now got to decide.
That's up to the people.
The people to vote for you.
Yeah.
Right, but let's see how things turn out over the next couple of weeks.
We'll see. That's all we can do is wait and see. September the 12th, we'll know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Democratic, okay. Well, again, I'm all set for next week. I have a guest lined up, so there's no pressure going into next week's. And, if you're doing a show this Wednesday, I'll definitely keep an eye.
Yeah, Wednesday we'll be here. We're going to have a special guest tune in on Wednesday, Christopher Dukes.
Oh, okay.
We'll be here. He'll be here on Wednesday.
He's been on in the past, I believe, Christopher.
Yeah, but this time we're going to get a little bit more into the situation that has, that has affected his life in such a negative way. It's terrible.
Oh, okay.
Terrible.
I'm not even
to be
aware.
accused of something that you didn't do.
Oh, okay.
Is a harsh burden to bear.
Mm-hmm.
It's a harsh burden. So he's going to be here on Wednesday. We'll talk a little bit with him.
Well, you had an excellent guest last week. I gave y'all props for that guy.
Mr. Royster.
Mr. Royster, yeah, former basketball player.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
One of the Doc Hurley boys.
Yes. And I guess he was a top basketball player.
Yeah.
In college, at least. And he seemed like he knows the history of Hartford basketball.
He knows the history of Hartford. Hartford's a small town. Everybody knows the history of Hartford if you're from Hartford.
But y'all was talking heavily about basketball. Then y'all got into other subjects matters too.
Hey, it was a great guest.
A great guest.
Yeah, we have great guests on the program because we got great co-hosts. And the co-hosts are the ones that usually bring our guests.
He knows Luis Delgado.
Yes.
This basketball.
Yeah.
They know each other. Okay. Well, we'll stand again. I mean, let's see how things turn out. You know, if you're going to have a press conference or you're going to have any big. Well, you already made your announcement that you're running.
We're running. We're running. We're up and running. We're up and running. Doesn't take us long.
Yeah.
7 days.
You got to get some media coverage, though. You got to get on Real Stories at some point.
We will. We won't need to get on Real Stories now.
Not now.
I'm not a media hog.
Okay. Well, definitely, I think that's important.
Although I think that's highly debatable since I sit on television all the time. No,
let's get you on
as we get down the road, as we get down the road, I'll be on those programs because it'll matter. It doesn't matter to be on those programs right now. Not that I'm saying those programs are insignificant. It's always great to have a conversation with some of my colleagues. However, having said that, those conversations are not going to be impactful because the election is so far off.
Right.
So as we get down to the nitty gritty, everybody that's running will be on those programs. So I don't need to. I don't need to have a grand announcement. We've been there, done that, and I can tell you they don't resonate to anything.
So you rather get on later than earlier, right?
No, I'd rather just get started with the work.
With the work, okay.
With the work. People aren't interested in necessarily what your plan is. They're interested in the deliverable. Are you going to do a thing? I shouldn't say they're not interested in your plan. They're not interested in hearing that you're working on something. They want to see what you're going to deliver. And so.
Do you have any major big plans? Well, you say you have everything outlined, but you have anything that you're working on that's quite not on your website?
Everything's on the website.
Okay. No, but I mean, is there anything that you are trying to implement that's not technically?
I can't implement anything. If I understand your question, we're doing what we do. In terms of implementing policy, you have to be elected to do that.
Yes.
I can point to my website and show you things that are currently being done that weren't being done when we started out. So things on the website have been implemented. Okay. My 5-point plan has not changed. It's the same. It just doesn't have, the architects of the plan implementing it. Yeah.
Well, again, I mean, people know that you're running. That's the main thing. You know how you'll go about your campaign strategy, where you're gonna be door knocking or whatever.
Oh, we'll be door knocking. And you made an interesting point. Everyone knows I'm running. And I had no big grand opening, no grand announcement, no. Right. Yeah, everyone knows I'm running.
Was that by design that you didn't want no big press conference or
anything?
Yes,
that was by design. That was intentional.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, if you ever need some assistance with media, well, again, you say you're going to get on media shows and cover, so yes.
We'll handle it. I have a whole different mindset. Before we were teaching, but I was highly insulted by somebody a couple days back, about 2 weeks ago, and so you know how I am. Once I actually set my mind to do something, it gets done.
Well, not to get too personal, but was you really thinking about running for mayor months ago, or this came all of a sudden?
This came all of a sudden.
Okay.
Out of the blue. Very disappointed with the cast of potential candidates. Extremely disappointed. And a conversation with several people, and decided to run.
So that was kind of like the final straw, that you was just dissatisfied with the current candidates that's running, and you couldn't take it any longer, so you had to do something. Yeah. Okay.
The same energy that got me running the first time has me running again, because I hear the plight of the people, I see the plight of the people, and folks just aren't being listened to. And Hartford Incorporated will always do well. That's why I told Mayor Bronin. Hartford Incorporated will always do well. The problem is the people of Hartford not doing well. And so the city's being colonized. It's being colonized. It's like you landed on the moon and there happen to be people there, but they're in the way. So you get rid of them and you build your mega cities and you just move on. But you're not there to help the people. You're there to help the enterprise.
Well, that's what I was saying, or that's how I feel about certain downtown. I know all of these apartment complexes they're building downtown, and it looks pretty. Obviously, you look at the newest buildings; it looks real developed and built.
And will even look prettier from off in a distance, looking in at the magic city that you used to live in.
Yeah, but it's not. Again, you've always stated that you feel like you can develop a city to also help and develop the people.
Absolutely.
But the way it's shaping out, these $2,000 plus a month apartments are not designed for the people that live in the city,
right?
Mostly, and they're not going to get much benefits out of it. They'll have something nice to look at, but I think you need more in life than just looking at a nice building from the outside. But again, if it's working for somebody, then I can't fault.
Well, there's nothing wrong with having $3,000 a month apartments downtown, but you can't do it at the expense of everyone else that needs help. So you subsidize an apartment building with $92 million. You can redo this building, and now you're gonna have people move in it, and you say that's that's a subsidy. If the money's coming from the state, that's subsidized.
Subsidized, right?
It's just not low income; it's high income subsidizing of housing. However, we're running out of time.
Okay. Like I say,
out
man,
of time.
Congratulations again. I wish you the best of luck, and anything that you need me to contribute towards helping at some point, if I can do it, I'm willing to work with you.
All right, Jonathan. Well, I want to get your picture on a stand with Stan.
It's the stand with Stan. I don't know. How you
okay.
Want to
All right.
doing that, if that's,
all right, brother.
But again, like I say, let's wait until Wednesday. I'll keep an eye on that show and look forward to possibly having a good show. I think it's a good show next week, but we have to wait and see.
All right.
Okay.
All right. We're out of time, my friends. We'll see you next time. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Okay.
are Puerto Rican, Mexican, Peruvian, Indian, Bosnian, Italian, Irish, Jamaican, African American, European, straight, gay, Nigerian, transgender, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, short, tall, skinny, rich, poor, happy, sad. Some of us hold PhDs, others a GED. Even though we may be Democrats, Republicans, or members of the Working Family Party, we as individuals are more than our political parties. You see, independent thinkers come from all walks of life, and the one thing we all have in common is that we love, live, laugh, and learn in the city of Hartford. My name is J. Stan McCauley, and it's time to move beyond the party line and vote for a mayor you can trust. I'm asking you for your vote on Tuesday, September the 12th, 2023, in the Democratic Party primary election for mayor of the city of Hartford. For more information, visit McCauleyformayor.com. Vote J. Stan McCauley. Have the courage to vote your conscience and vote for the name you trust.